Day 5 CLG versus Coup. This is game 1. I reset the days, so things will be a little bit less confusing. Right off the bat, I don't like the Ashe and Kennen bans. Prey has been doing a lot of utility AD carries in this tournament, but banning those out I don't think was necessary, so that was the main thing I disagree with about CLG's draft here. So Mordekaiser, GP, and probably banned Lulu since they're on red side. Pretty sure that was the ban. Yeah. Okay, so what is CLG first pick? So you focus 380 carries with your bans. Oh, it was Echo. And you first pick Echo. Like, why not pick Elise there? Why not ban Darius? Like, why not ban Azir? There's a lot of questions that I have, so I don't like the Echo flex pick because as soon as you pick a champion that can lane decent against Echo mid, then you're pretty much forced to put him in the jungle or have like a losing matchup, which is just going to be sort of lackluster. Azir has a good matchup into Echo, so I think that's a really good pick by Ku. And I would have liked to see CLG abuse Hojin's champion pool a bit more here. And letting Darius through just seems like a bad idea, even if Zion thinks he can handle it. As a coach, I probably wouldn't let that through. But we'll see how things actually end up being for competitive play next year, because this is like the last major event for season 5, obviously. So CLG with the Tristana and the Veigar. I think Veigar is a good pick here. Tristana uh, not really that highly valued by Prey, I wouldn't think, but he could play it maybe. So I don't know if that's a priority pick or they just wanted to pick something so that they can decide the other picks later. I actually think Doublelift does just fine on Jinx, and whenever he's on a champion like Jinx, he's got a lot more carry potential because he'll put himself in those risky situations on immobile AD carry, and he'll just make it work. So Elise actually making it through that far in the draft is kind of weird to me. And I don't know, it seemed really obvious that the Echo was going to end up jungling after they picked his year, so maybe even CLG was expecting them to go Darius and Elise, and they wanted to pick Azir for themselves, or they figured if they do pick Azir, then we'll take Veigar. But I still think Ku ends up with the slightly better draft phase here, and Tom Kench, which just completely destroys them. So going to move through this game pretty quick. There's a couple of main mistakes. Ku does lane swap, and Gorilla and Smeb end up laning together. So Prey's got the solo farm going, and what is it right here? I want to say this is when Doublelift and Aphromoo get apprehended right here. Okay, so that's really bad. Doublelift already had 3 autos on him, so all Gorilla had to do was flash W, and he chomped him. So Doublelift has no W and no flash. I think Aphromoo used his exhaust a little bit late, or a little bit early, depending on which way you look at it. And I think Monte Cristo said something about that in the broadcast as well. And Smeb, of course, lining up the full damage on his Q, so that was really good by them. Prey just getting solo farm, and Double lift getting beat up a little bit by Smeb. Here's the next big play. So Xmithy seems like he's getting caught out. Kuro's first mistake here, though. Whoops. His mistake is that he gets out of the bush, and despite his ultimate knocking Xmithy over the wall, the E channel and auto attack brings him back over. So now Kuro's getting chunked out instead of him catching Xmithy, and he ends up getting finished off by Pull Belter, which was decent V-Guard mechanics. So not anything really spectacular. Just pretty much what you would expect. And Smeb doing very well for being in a 1v2 lane now. With those 2 kills, he can just use his experience advantage, and he's got like a decent amount of health with Phage and Dorn's Blade. So Gorilla just goes up top to make sure that Prey has favorable conditions. Since he's already done work. Right here, this is a huge mistake by Aphromoo. First mistake, using his Q. Second mistake is going up without your AD carry. If you look where double lift is, he's about 2.5, 3 screens away. So Jinx is already closer, for 1. For 2, Gorilla has a level on him. 3, he's got gray health, and Aphromoo only has shields which reduce damage but don't completely nullify it like Gorilla's shield can. So he stood in auto attack range for a little bit longer than I would have liked, and this here is his last mistake because he didn't flash. So this Q from Gorilla actually stuns Aphromoo, and he's able to W him, bring him back onto the chompers. And I don't think Aphromoo actually thought Hojin was there. So a little bit of lack of awareness, a little bit of not using your flash in time. So this tilts CLG pretty badly, and they're just pretty much fighting to stay relevant the whole game. Gorilla with the troll. Okay, so this is the other major play of the game. Going on to Gorilla, who's really tanky, is probably a mistake. Even if you get the kill onto double lift. Fiora has just gotten to top lane. He's only got pickaxe, so he's not going to be like that useful in a fight. He's down 20 CS also, so Darius just got his Ruby Crystal, Phage, and Dorn's Blade, so he's got a decent amount of health. Whoops again. And once CLG committed to being on Ku's side of the jungle, that's just like free AoE for Jinx here, and they're just really sloppy. So if they weren't already tilted, CLG tilted after this, and we're going to call that a lost game. Almost everything that happened after was like a result of the early game that CLG had. That looked good for CLG for a second, but didn't prove to be. Okay, so this Abyssal Voyage catches CLG, and this is like all before 15 minutes, so this team fight actually wins Ku the game by baiting out Prey. I don't know if that was their intention, but that was a huge ult by Kuro. Absolutely massive. So let's watch this develop. Tom and Jinx are up here, and they're going to ult on top of double lift. And that was just like them fishing around for something. Huh? Get it, fishing. Anyway. Look at that Azir ultimate right there. That was brutal. So as soon as you're displaced, if you're CLG, look how many of their health bars are low just from the Azir. And if you're displaced like that, it's impossible to fall back on good positioning. So again, if CLG weren't already tilted, this definitely lost them the game, and we're gonna move right into the next game. So Flash Wolves versus Pain Gaming. This is, what is this? This is game 2 of day 5. TF, Azir, and Italy. No, I'm sorry. TF, Azir, and what are they gonna ban? I actually don't remember. Let's skip out a little bit. So TF, Azir, and Kalista banned for Flash Wolves, and Italy is a target ban against Karsa. He's proven to be really good on that champion, so don't have a whole lot of problems with that, except that they left Lulu up. So it goes Lulu, Braum, Rek'Sai. Braum, Rek'Sai is pretty good for a first rotation, so I'll give that to Pain. And then Flash Wolves with the Annie and Jinx is just kind of like a neutral pick. That's most likely going to be support Annie, but you can also bring it to mid if they pick a champion who doesn't do well against Annie mid. So, for instance, I think Annie would do well into Vigor. And maybe the matchup has changed since I don't play mid a lot, but that's something that I would definitely question. So, Gnar and Tristana. Gnar is a little bit out of meta at this point in time on this patch, but it is a signature champion for the top lane, so it's one of those picks that is likely to stick around, and it's always going to be pretty decent. Gnar, Tristana, and Yasuo and Lee Sin. So Flash Wolves actually disguised this Yasuo comp the entire draft phase pretty well. And there's no way for Pain to really know that that's what they're going for, so I want to say that they stuck Annie in place of Braum. Braum probably would have been the better pick with that comp, but Pain took it away unknowingly, more than likely. But Braum is a priority pick in this tournament as well, so this actually ends up being a really, really close game, but I'm going to skip most of the early game because they essentially get up onto even gold at some point. So right about here. Gnar with the flank. He's about to turn Mega Gnar. So Flash Wolves are split up into 2 separate groups here. Maple and Stake just decide to do as much damage to Mylon. I think. Yeah, that's what ends up happening. So NL actually goes down immediately. Pain picks up a really favorable fight actually, so this actually gives them a gold lead. They don't pick up the kill on the Stake. This next fight here at 34 minutes. It's just Pain kind of putting pressure and poking around for a fight, seeing what's going to happen. We missed a little bit at the beginning, but since there's no kills, I think it'd be more prudent to examine the next course of action for Flash Wolves as opposed to how that fight started out, because I think it was more like insignificant, kind of like a random fight. So Flash Wolves just opt to back. They don't have any real objectives to go for. Baron obviously being down. So Pain has a decent gold lead, but it's not actually going to amount to that much. What's more important is positioning for these team fights and usage of abilities. Standing on top of a ward, they don't know it. So Kami's coming from base. NL just looks bloodthirsty as soon as he gets that shield on him. Mylon coming in on the flank again, so Stake is already over here. Lee Sin ultimate into Maple ultimate. NL gets an attack off. That shockwave. Why is it even over there? It should be over here. Or over here. So everyone has a way to get back to the tower. Except for Kami. So he's just kind of hanging around. Excuse me. Pain's basically chunked. Flash Wolves are pretty chunked, but NL feels confident with that shield that he can get most of that tower. And shield cooldown, he's able to get it. And nearly picks up Mylon for his troubles. And if he got Mylon, he probably would have got BRTT as well. So Flash Wolves going for the dragon. I know putting out some good damage, but nothing really of consequence yet. Dragon is low. And Karsa picks it up with Lee Sin execute. So that was a mistake by Mylon here. Go back and watch this again. Mylon has the opportunity to get the perfect flank. So he's walking around right now. He's flanking this whole time. You can see him on the minimap. And for some reason he stops. Then he needs to get some rage. So he gets the rage going. And he's ready. He's getting stunned, so he's like panicking that he's not going to get his ult off before he dies. So he panic flashes. Karsa's coming onto him to kill him as well over here. And he can see that because his teammates have vision on Karsa. So instead of flashing here though, he should flash here and knock everyone towards Pain. So even though he got them into the wall, that baits them into a bad team fight because now they have no Gnar ultimate to further displace anyone. And NL is able to go off because nobody's touching him. And he's got Lulu. Kami actually did a ton of damage there. So interesting TP. Flash Wolf's gonna go for this Baron. Okay, so Pain forces them off Baron. Nothing really comes of it. Too little, too late on the shockwave. Should have led the fight with that shockwave. Pain gets a pick. Da 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 da. Flash Wolf's continuing to pressure the Baron with the pink ward. Since they have Jinx damage and Lulu shield, they have pretty much no reason to stop playing this Baron against Pain over and over again. Maple is actually becoming a huge threat with all the items he's got. He doesn't have Last Whisper, doesn't have Lifesteal, but he's got a decent amount of damage and crit. Alright, so this is the play where Pain calls for Mylon to go split pushing. And their basic play is that if they put enough people to go bottom, then we'll do Baron. So they're trying a little bit of split push to get the pressure off of Baron or to take it for themselves. Pain doesn't have really good information on anyone, so I think they're just trying to put so much pressure on bottom that it will necessitate at least one person. If more than one person shows, or if enough of their failsafes aren't full of people, like Pain's just gonna go for this Baron straight away. So kind of sensing that they're out of position, they decide not to go for the Baron because Flash will show up at mid, and they did see them going for the Baron, so that means that they're going to go for a push probably. So if the enemy team goes for Baron, then what you can do is do a fast push. That's what Flash Wolves did, and it forced Pain off of the Baron. Karsa here forcing the engage. Not the best. He does die right away, so that wasn't very clean. So it's 4v4 at mid right now. And Mylon's gonna get this turret, so and since he's Mega Gnar, he doesn't have enough damage to kill Lulu. But Pain uses this opportunity to threaten Baron, and this controls most of Flash Wolves. So at this point, Gnar decides to keep split pushing, and now Lulu is forced to go back to base, stop Gnar from getting an inhibitor. I actually think that Mylon should have teleported into Baron Pit and fought with Pain. Pain might have been able to take the W right there off of that split push play, so I want to say is a good use of split push, and they probably had most everything right except a few of the details. And if you clean stuff up like that, then it can be very rewarding. But it's not a foolproof strategy. So it's mostly about being adaptable and reading your opponent. And as we can see, most people are on full items now. Yasuo just needs to pick up Last Whisper. He's got the Randuins in there as well. Flash Wolves make a play to rush down this Baron. And Mylon going for the inhibitor. Surti trying to be the hero ends up getting caught out. So I think that was a mistake for him to go for that. I think you just trade the inhibitor for the Baron, make sure that you don't die. With these kind of death timers, your death isn't worth it, so they would have been able to defend this tower, even against the Baron maybe, so they end up trading inhibitor for inhibitor, and they lost Baron, so it's definitely in Flash Wolf's favor. And really get engaged by Karza, but he ends up going down to the tower. Aggro Maples in too deep, so right here, Flash Wolves should have left, and they tried to go for Nexus, and NL threw some attacks towards Kami. If he either focuses Nexus here or stays with his team a little bit better and kills the front line of Diaud and Mylon, then that is a one game for Flash Wolves right then and there. So mistakes there, and that leaves Pain Gaming to take advantage of some really long death timers. So they end up getting top inhibitor here. And we'll go into this next deciding encounter here in a second. Okay, so starts out with State getting caught out of position, BRTT kills him, and top and bot inhibitor. So now with open Nexus, Pain Gaming only has mid inhibitor down, so they need to just sit at mid for as long as they can. Don't get low, don't get chunked out, just sit at mid and siege. Let your siege minions work for you. If bottom inhibitor is about to respawn, then you can go and rotate down and get that. So what Pain actually does here costs them the game. Like they easily could have won this. They have the gold lead. They have just as good of a late game team comp as the Flash Wolves, but mainly because what's his name, Diaud. Mainly because Diaud takes a lot of poke damage by standing too close to the tower instead of standing near his AD carry. They're unable to continue the siege right here. This is the huge mistake for him to walk up this far. He should have been somewhere over here. And somehow they're even allowing Lee Sin to poke. He's gotten 2 Qs off. This is the big damage though from NL. So now Diaud is on the back line. He even takes the Q from Lee Sin, almost necessitating his death. So Karsa went for the Diaud kill again, and maybe to get position on the rest of the team for an insect. Something of the kind. Okay, but because Flash Wolves are low, they get forced off, and they're not making it an issue here on their Nexus. So if Pain is able to get that inhibitor, I want to say that they can strangle out this game. So then they decide to come over here for Dragon when they're already really low. And this prompts Karsa and Maple to go off. And Jinx is able to clean up pretty easily. So Pain lost the game based on not being able to siege mid. Coup versus Pain Gaming. This is day 3, or no, day 5, game number 3. We're not gonna go through this game. We're watching picks and bans. So TF, Gnar, and Lulu, Ash, Gangplank, and Mordekaiser. Oh, they banned Yasuo. What? What? I don't remember this. So Pain takes Braum and Gragas. Hmm. You let through Darius, Azir, and Mordekaiser. You pick Callista and Lysandra, Braum, and Gragas. And where is your damage supposed to come from? Oh, okay, moving on. Flash Wolves versus CLG. This is what? Game 4? Day 5, game 4. Okay, yeah. Azir, Elise. GP Mord, no surprise. Let's skip ahead a little bit. Lulu ban on blue side. Okay, that's interesting. So they don't want to force themselves to pick Lulu. Since Stake isn't the greatest on it, they identified that as a weakness. So since they don't want to throw Maple on Lulu, he's more of a carry-oriented laner, mid laner. Maybe he just doesn't mesh well with the champion, and Stake doesn't play it that well. They're just opting to ban it now. So if that's part of their strategy, then that's fine for me. So CLG is kind of disappointing me here again with this Echo pick. I don't think that they used it very well. I think Echo could have been weaved into team comps as a last pick. And Pobelzer hasn't shown that he's a worthy Echo enough to start picking it so early in your draft phase. If you're going to use a flex pick, then there's better flex picks than Echo. And we haven't seen any other teams using it as a flex pick. They've only been using it as a mid laner in this World Championship. So I think Xmithy's prioritization on Echo or the coaching staff or a combination of everything was a pretty big mistake. Alistar is fine. Get Aframu on something he's comfortable with. So you got to keep in mind that CLG's tilted after losing to Coup 2 times in a row. I don't think anyone would have done well after playing Coup 2 times in a row, seeing as they went to the finals. But obviously, SKT dismantled them, going 3-1. So, which was actually today. But getting back to this game, Morgana and Jinx. I think Morgana was a really smart pick against CLG. I don't think that they know what to do against Morgana. I think they have like some kind of flawed thinking when it comes to priority picks. And they don't play to their strengths well enough. So pull Belter on Victor is good. Double lift on Tristana is fine. It just seems all really predictable to me. Maple with the LeBlanc and Stake coming out with the Malphite, so I think Flash Wolves had a much better draft here. Okay, so they end up flexing that to top for Aframu. I don't know if they planned that the whole time. Or not Aframu, for Zion. I forgot that's what they did, so maybe they had some like grand strategy to throw Echo in the top lane a little bit more often than they did, but or maybe it was to throw off their opponents by saying like, "Oh, we only play Echo jungle," and then it just shows up top randomly. So I think Lee Sin was not the greatest pick here as well. I think you could put Eve against that team, and Eve would have done much better. And as a champion, that's also in Nick Smithy's wheelhouse. If you put unnecessary priority on Lee Sin, do it like early on in the draft. Picking Lee Sin late just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially in terms of the composition. Okay, so CLG probably invading here just so that Morgana can't get a good invade off of them. And they're fishing for deep wards, so they want to spot out this lane swap. So anytime you show in the enemy jungle, you have to expect them to be in your own jungle. And Flash Wolves actually get deep wards of their own, so this is a very old school style of lane swap. And don't really think that you need to go deep in the enemy jungle to get information anymore. But I suppose it works for CLG. Neither team really gives up their lane assignments too heavily, and they just like go for the 2v2 bottom. So Doublelift was trying to get a freeze on. It makes me think that he thought he was 1v2. And Maple getting chunked out a bit here early, but Pobelter took a little bit of health too, so. Wait, I'll go back to this. This is 19 minutes. Okay, I just wanted to check the bans. Both junglers on their way to their next buff. Heads up lanes, and I want to say CLG should match up against them okay, but these team compositions that they picked are so weird. Top doesn't have two carries. It's got a tank and a carry, so if Stake played more carry champions, then this Echo might have been like more of a surprise now. Yeah, putting so much priority on that champion, it just seemed really off to me. Instead of helping CLG's draft, it just seemed to like pigeonhole them into bad comps. Echo's W is still amazing, but I would have liked to see Zion Spartan getting last pick and putting Pobelter and Doublelift and Xmithy on pretty much anything that's left up because they can play it. So you put Aphromoo on his best champions, and you put Zion on his best champions, and they'll carry you. So, not the best gank by Xmithy. I think even just putting more time into farming would have been the right call. You're gonna gank for Tristana through lane, and they have a Morgana, so one of the spells that Alistar throws out is gonna get spell shielded. So there's very little chance of them getting on to NL. I actually think CLG could have banned Jinx and then just played whatever was left. Play Ashe or Kennen. Play the utility. Like, I think Doublelift's ability to lane versus Jinx as Tristana clouded his judgment a little bit. He should have spoke up maybe a little bit more. Or someone should have told him, like, hey, you don't need to tough it out. We're going to do what we can to take advantages here in the draft phase. Because, sure, you can play against it, but doesn't mean you can play against it in every scenario. So failure to accept your own weaknesses, I think, is a big problem for a lot of pro players. And more importantly, not identifying these problems is a problem of their coaching staffs. Doublelift is just like going CS heavy, not really harassing too much. Just kind of controlling the creep wave, and it goes fairly even. But mid lane, LeBlanc against Victor, I want to give the early game to Victor, so I want to say that Pobelter just misplayed the lane. Although I suppose LeBlanc has some pretty abusable laning. So maybe Victor needs an item or two before he can start beating up on LeBlanc. Once he gets that X-Core item. So Sword Art fishing for the snare, doesn't quite catch him. And Karsta ends up just kind of wasting a little bit of time. Xmithy is here as well. CLG has no way to know that Karsta was there or that he recalled, so Xmithy probably feels like he's wasting time too at this point. So they're either going to force something or Xmithy's going to go back to farming. He can't wait for more than 2 more seconds, and as you can see, he's gone. He's going around, fishing for information to see if that bush is warded. I'm still watching bottom. And there's no opening. Flash Wolves are just playing it too safe. So CLG decides to go for this dragon instead. I think this is a mistake. Your win condition, if you look at the team comp, is not dependent on getting that early dragon. It's not the only way you're going to win with 5 dragons, so I think Xmithy should have just hard farmed till 6. He could have taken wolves and wraiths, and then by the time he was done doing that, red would have been up. He could have recalled, gotten a full gank session, gank rotation off of his 2.5 minute red buff. So a lot of misusage of time. And once you get behind this Lee Sin, like see Karsa, he's already at 29 CS and a level ahead. So if we could look at Spectator right now, I would want to say that Karsa's a lot closer to hitting 6, obviously. Because he's just been hard farming. He's not looking to make a play. He just wants to scale up in this game. So if this goes super late game, just based on team comps, Flash Wolves win because they have Malphite. And they have LeBlanc, so that can instant give one person. Only way that CLG would win on even gold getting into like super late game would be a mistake in positioning. So CLG would have to get a catch, or Pobelter would have to hard carry on Victor, which something he's capable of doing, but I don't think he had the best showing here against LeBlanc. So his champion pool kind of became an issue at this Worlds. he didn't really have any standout champions that he was that great on other than his ear. And you either take it away or ban it against him, and then he's forced onto like TF, Victor. Probably can't even play Fizz that well. Just not the greatest. So it doesn't surprise me CLG's going with more carry oriented laner with the Hu He change. Honestly, I think Aphromoo is going to be the one that's going to retire. Doublelift should be just fine with this Season 6 kicking out. Zion should stay, and depending on who CLG can get, Xmith he might retire, so I'll give Doublelift at least another season before he retires. If he decides to, that is. But he really needs to up his macro game understanding so that when he's making these micro decisions, he's making a more informed decision. So micro and macro are two different things, but they both feed into each other in a way that if you have glaring mistakes in your macro play, then it doesn't matter how good your micro play is because you never get to use it. And it goes the other way too, because let's say you have really good micro play, and in Doublelift's case, he does, and that makes up for some of the lack of his macro knowledge. I think if he had that problem addressed in particular, then he'd be undoubtedly one of the world's best AD carries again. And this all comes back to a funny term that people like to make jokes about with a DP, with dude potential. Just look at the map, see what information is available to you. So lack of information is actually information in itself. So it's all about how you read things. And I think Faker recommends to this day that you look at the minimap every 3 seconds. So that's something that I picked up early on in Season 2. And we played against a lot of Chinese teams in particular, just scrimmaging, and some high level tips are definitely passed back and forth. So it's just great to see how far the game has come strategically, and there's always more things to analyze. It's almost impossible to keep up with. So having a good working knowledge of certain things that you know to be true is pretty important, but also being adaptable is just as important. This is a pretty huge game for CLG considering that they lost 2 games to Ku. Pretty much just a farm fest. Flash Wolves can't really threaten Dragon because CLG has a superior mid game. They're just gonna go for the towers and try and hit late game. So this is really good by Flash Wolves, and CLG, looking at their champions, they don't necessarily think that they have too terrible of a late game, so they're thinking, okay, this is fine. So Doublelift being greedy for CS actually causes him to die here. Uses everything incorrectly. I think it caught him way off guard, and he wouldn't normally make this play. So let's see how this develops. They take the tower, and it looks like they're all backing. NL calls for the bush gank, so they're like, okay, let's try it. You know, this guy's going to be greedy. I've seen his play patterns. he's going up for CS every single time. So no vision. That's LolEv's first mistake. If there were someone in this bush, standing here is a problem. So he doesn't know if they're here. He doesn't know if they're here. He doesn't know if they're over in the other bush. Not having the vision is a problem. So he flash knockups. Wait a second. That Q got snuck in there exactly when he was. Okay, so Sword Art flash Q's double lift to secure this kill after Karsa flash knockups. Double lift attempts a flash of his own, but gets almost no distance out of it because he's trying to get over the wall. And there's really no way out of that. Once you make the decision to walk up this far, there's like nothing mechanical the double lift did wrong. Nonetheless, it is a mistake and it is greedy. He could have maybe farmed wolves in that time, waited for some kind of information to come out on the map, and if nothing else, rotated up to mid, or if they spend enough time in that bush, then they probably all recall, and then you can fish around until someone shows up in one of your wards. If nothing else, just go back and, I mean, he's got Avarice, but obviously you want to get the Avarice completion, and farming jungle camps in order to finish static shiv isn't the greatest, but if it's not safe, then you really shouldn't be pushing the issue. So CLG gets a nice catch, and that Victor damage is just unreal, so picks up NL as well. Double Abyssal here for CLG. Not terrible considering 3 of the champions are going to deal primarily magic damage from Flash Wolves. Double Lift reaps the rewards of them doing work at mid and gets this bottom tower for himself. And also the next wave of farm, so CLG takes out the red. And at this time they need to be getting back to mid to defend, as Cobelter is calling for everyone mid, since they're putting 3 to 4 people here. NL of course goes bottom to catch the wave. Double Lift nearly gets caught out by Sword Art again, so I almost want to say that he shouldn't have walked that way. He should have just walked through lane and recalled. Yeah, so Maple got chunked out enough where he couldn't do any more damage, so then NL should have just ran away from that fight. You can't stand that close to Victor and not expect to get popped. So CLG actually makes a really good play to get stake, except he's still got flash, so he makes it out. He's tanky enough to where he can make it out of that. And then CLG doesn't have vision in their own jungle, and Xmithy gets caught out by Maple. So that ward that he placed was the ward that he was trying to place. Instead of going that way, he should have went around and dropped it over the wall. Let's go back and analyze that again real quick. Xmithy should have expected them to be in this range of this vicinity. So the last known place they're at is mid. By the time he gets over here to this bush, he should expect that they're in that bush. That's what we're talking about when we talk about dude potential. So he's going down right now. He throws in the ward. Maple's already got the setup on him, so he's got the chains, and it goes off. Gets the W damage, and that's just too easy for professional level play. Karsa looking for the picks, putting pressure on the CLG. Zion coming in with the flank. They pick up Karsa, but that's not tank Echo, so it's a little bit of mispositioning by Zion. I think that he excels on tanks and AD champions and is not the best on AP variants, unless it's a hybrid, so would have liked to see a bit more of a hybrid tanky build from him. But going full AP and from the top lane is pretty potent, especially on this patch. And Doublelift with a small CS lead that he can't really use, and Jinx is just going to catch right up now. See how he's farming and Doublelift is just getting pressured out? This sets the tempo in a huge way. After nearly getting caught out and killed. So the resulting loss of pressure makes Flash Wolves decide, okay, we can pressure Dragon or we can pressure Baron, so we don't really give a crap about your 5 dragons, we just want blood, so Flash Wolves are just going for towers. Good call to get the mid tower. Sword Art just poking around looking for picks. Doublelift hiding in the wolves, so all these moves were calculated by the Flash Wolves, and they've had aggressive wards to spot everything out the whole way, so if you're being spotted out this far ahead of time, you have to make the call and start pressuring Baron or start pressuring a side lane. Get Flash Wolves off of the top of their wards and start making a play. So CLG actually goes mid here, except that I think that they're a little bit too close. Shouldn't be this close to that cluster of enemies. They should have went top instead. Doublelift getting caught out, and then Aframu getting caught because he's helping Doublelift. Pobelter stayed too long here and gets caught out by the snare. He's trying to do damage and carry the fight, but at this point, fight is almost turned around by CLG. Zion almost had the damage, but I think that was a little bit of an overreach by Doublelift. And this is going to make it to where it's really easy to finish off Zion. He was trying to hop away to one of those creeps. So it's basically even game. Oh, Aframu gets chained. And the ultimate saved his life. If he didn't ult there, then he's probably dead. Man, this Morgana from Sword Art is just blowing CLG up. So they're gonna set up this Baron now. Xmithy's coming from base. Zion's already chunked out from Maple. Xmithy's still not with the team. He's going for the Baron, except it's already gone. So now he decides to go with the team. By this time, Flash Wolves are already deciding to re-engage. Except Stake doesn't have an opening. So now with Baron, they're gonna push down mid and probably bottom. Outer turret like this should be easy work for a Jinx. And indeed, goes down pretty quickly. Xmithy just sitting over here, doing nothing basically. So this is what the Lee Sin pick does for you at around 30 minutes, if you're not already snowballed. Picking Lee Sin into Morgana is a really big mistake. And how are you going to kill LeBlanc? How are you going to kill a Malphite? So, you want to pick Lee Sin if you're able to kill lanes early. Stakes ultimate forces Zion's ultimate, and he gets caught out by a snare. What do you know? Now Smithy goes on everyone except kicking people that are just as good as you at this point in the game into your team won't always net the best results. Doublelift nearly carries the fight. One more auto onto Sword Art, and that's a completely different fight. Instead, he mispositions, gets caught out by a snare. And that... It's not a game based off of that, but it's going to be harder and harder to come back once Flash Wolves get a lead. Right here. Once he decided to go this way, Sword Art already had him. Should have went that way. Because then he can still dodge backwards or forwards. There's nowhere to dodge if you go that way. Okay, so Full Belter ends up getting taken out. How did this develop though? Doublelift's at bottom, and they're putting pressure on top. Zion is going for a play on NL. He pretty much completely caught him, but he used his ultimate when he's full health just for positioning. Full Belter almost kills Maple, but then the Jinx Rocket ends up catching him, gives him the double buff to finish off this tower. And since Doublelift was bottom, he's just now joining the fight. Full Belter's dead now for a good amount of time, so how are you going to stop Jinx with the Malphite front line from getting damage onto this tower? Other than by killing this minion, so you see Xmithy coming up and smiting it. But then Maple's putting pressure on mid tower as well, so... This is the beginning of CLG getting choked out. All based around the Baron and not having good wards in the one fight that I talked about. Forcing up mid instead of going top. That was the big mistake in this game. So a bad series of events for CLG. So they're coming back top without Baron because they know that they want this inhibitor. Stakes ultimate is up. They have Jinx, they have Morgana. Jinx should be safe against any engage. Okay, so Echo W is down for like 15-20 seconds. So now inhibitor should be the call. Clearing out the wave. Doesn't get the W off again. Oh, he's got Merlinomicon, so his W is much lower cooldown than I was thinking. Okay, so... Okay. Xmithy ulting Stake into this tower doesn't actually do a whole lot because it forces you to focus their tank. So you bait out the Morgana shield and you kick in a priority target instead, assuming you can survive that long as Lee Sin. So they eventually get Stake. So that means that is a bad W by Zion. That was really bad. He should have trailed them longer, gotten in range with his E, and then W'd on top of everyone. And then by the time he needs to use his ultimate shadow is right on top of the W. So then he can ultimate and stun everyone without them understanding what the hell just happened. So really bad use of Echo ultimate. in this game from Zion Spartan. Maple forced to go bottom and stop the tower from taking a lot of damage. Cleans up a nice amount of CS for himself. And he should pick up Void Staff off of that, which means that he is a force to be reckoned with. Actually, he doesn't quite have enough. Right as soon as he gets that 3-item power spike, though, you need an MR item to survive against LeBlanc, and Doublelift doesn't have any. There's also no... Yeah, I guess there is an Aegis from Aphromoo. Zion got completely caught out of position there, though, so that was huge. And Xmithy still opting to kick Stake into his team, which is a mistake. Aphromoo is left for dead, and NL's just got too much damage at this point. So maybe even if he played Lee Sin better here, they still wouldn't win because the pick wasn't the greatest. And if you're going to pick Lee Sin into Flash Wolves with just as good of a late game as you, then use the Lee Sin early. Make sure it's a lane swap. Do something. Because what they were forced into was just really painful to watch. Flash Wolves get 2 inhibitors. And they have like an 8,000 gold lead, so Zion ulting that quick, it's not a good matchup for this it's not a good fit for this champion. Or I want to say Zion's not a good fit on it. Okay, and here, after this replay, they're setting up on the Karsa. Alistar uses most of his abilities. He doesn't have anything now, so Doublelift almost has enough damage to beat up on Karsa, but not quite enough. So now they're caught out, and NL just gets a huge amount of damage off. Malphite ultimate completely carried this fight. NL doesn't even need the rocket in order to get a Pensa here. Focusing on the pole belter, good targeting, Alistar, then Xmithy. And that's all she wrote. Ku versus Flash Wolves. What is this? 1, 2, 3. Game 5, day 5. So Nidalee, Morgana, and Malphite. Ku has been watching the Flash Wolves games, and Morgana was something they didn't want to deal with. Karsa on the Nidalee is something else they didn't want to deal with. So since they're on blue side, they can get rid of a lot of these champions. Flash Wolves decide that they don't want to deal with Prey's Ashe, which is actually not too terrible of a ban in itself, considering you only really get one ban on red side during this tournament. Darius first pick. I think that's a great pick for Smeb. So that does leave the Lulu up. Stake hasn't proven to be the greatest Lulu player, and Maple admittedly wants to play more carry type champions, so I think leaving that up is fine against Flash Wolves. Except that they have a Jinx player. So leaving Jinx and Lulu up may not have been the best choice against Flash Wolves. The rest of the draft doesn't even really matter. The Kennen Callista is fine. I like that. I like the Azir. I like Rek'Sai, and I like Darius. As for Flash Wolves, I like the Jinx, Lulu. I don't really like the Thresh, but it can work, I guess. And then Lee Sin, not really digging it too much. Although on this patch it was pretty good. So again, I just want to say, like, you put Flash Wolves versus Ku on even gold. I think Ku's got the better team comp. Alright, I'm gonna spend a little bit less time on this game. And we'll of course go through the last pick and bans of the day. NL's Jinx is just really, really good. So this is the team fight that actually lost Ku the game. And they put a lot of priority onto NL, but they weren't able to finish him off. So made a huge impact. Callista stylistically doesn't match up all that well against the Jinx in the first place. So yeah. So Flash Wolves got caught out when they were on top inhibitor, but nonetheless they do get some inhibitors down. And then they're just kind of going around the horn. Maple with the easy kill on Gorilla. That's the LeBlanc damage. Now Flash Wolves have a pretty big lead. Only way they're going to lose is if Maple and NL get caught out. Ku's trying their best to control them, but Flash Wolves see an opportunity to just rush down the Baron, and I think this Baron's going to go down before Ku even gets over there. Super minions are pushing down the Ku base, so Maple sort of getting caught out, sort of baiting. And this is putting Ku in a position where they have to go back to base, or they're going to lose Nexus turrets. And they just lost one there, so this should end up being a free Baron for Flash Wolves, since they had to send so many people back. And it was really good patience by them to not force a fight when it was safe for Ku to fight. Sword Art zoning with the threshold, getting in there, and Maple just destroys prey. That was bad positioning. They do stop the Baron, but Maple just putting in so much work. Smeb did really good in that fight though. Maple doing more work. And NL will finish off this game. Pain Gaming versus CLG. This is game number 6, day 5. Last game of the day. We're not going to review this game. We're going to review picks and bans. Let's skip ahead. Okay, so Vigar, Braum, and Lulu on blue side. So Mordekaiser instead of the GP ban. I don't really agree with that. I think you force them on Mordekaiser instead of giving up Gangplank. I think CLG was demoralized at this point in the tournament, so I don't think there's much of a reason to analyze the game. I think the team comps were off. They're just playing for pride at this point. Or they're just so tilted that they don't really give a shit what they're doing. So the order of the draft is GP and then Bardley Sin. So that's probably the worst red side picks that I've seen in this whole tournament. Riven and Vayne as well. They're all single target champions. Single target, single target, single target, single target. And wouldn't that be great if they finished it off with Malzahar as another single target pick? Okay, but I think they're just having fun at this point. Hover in the Poppy. He ends up picking Morgana, and I have no idea where the hell this pick came from. I think he decided if he was going to lose, he'd pull out one of his old favorites, if they're bound to lose anyway. And Pain ends up winning this game. They showed that they were pretty close to other regions in terms of their top performance, but their mid to bottom level performance is much lower than other regions as well. And I don't want to say that Bane is a bad pick for CLG. I just think that they don't know how to draft around it, and maybe they all decided to go with their signature champions just to enjoy themselves here at Worlds for this last game. But they were definitely tilted. This tournament went downhill as soon as they had to play Coup Tigers 2 times in a row. So unfortunate, but that's the way it goes.